Lovely. Thank you, Gary. And let me just also say a huge thank you for just bearing with us there. Though, as I say, the wonders of technology. So thank you to everyone for joining today. And Gary, thank you for inviting me along to talk about wellbeing. As Gary said at the beginning, I've been working in the wellbeing space for a number of years now, and more dedicated really over the last 4 years in particular. It is a passion of mine. It's something that I can see such a difference within the bank in terms of what we've been doing in the wellbeing space. So it really is a delight to be able to come along and share some of the activities that we've been doing over the last 4 years, how we've linked it to our strategy, and share with you our thoughts around where we're taking wellbeing going forward, because it's certainly not a thing that's going away. So if I take you on to the next slide, and Gary, thank you. I know you're going to move the slides on for us. So I thought today I would start with a little bit around our strategy and sort of the focus of wellbeing and how we look at it. And as I said there in my introduction, we've moved from a place whereby wellbeing was something we did probably on the side. It was always there within the bank. It was always done really, really well. It was always something important, but actually it was never really truly embedded into core of the bank and the strategy. And what you have on that slide there is very simply what the bank's strategy is, and that's for us to be number one for customer service, trust and advocacy. And we set ourselves that target for 2020. So when that came out a few years ago, that really was something that we said, okay, so we can do, from our perspective, wellbeing, we can get behind this. We can do what we can to help and support our colleagues within the bank. And really, ultimately, wellbeing is all about helping people to bring the best of themselves to work to serve customers. That's what it means to us. So everything that we do in the wellbeing space, if it's not ticking that box of helping someone bring the best of themselves to work, if it's not helping them to support our customers, then it's not something that we would look at. But our remit is bank-wide, so we are a smaller bank than we used to. Obviously, you're very familiar with RBS and the journey that we've been on, but we are bank-wide. We do have a number of offices regionally and throughout the globe, and we have around about 70,000 employees. So that is the sort of scale of what we are looking at when we look at wellbeing. So the journey started in 2014, so taking us back kind of those 4 years. And really, as I said at the beginning, we have had that focus on wellbeing for a long time. We've always had programs and wellbeing initiatives that we've done, and we've always kind of focused it on this, what I think is a really helpful diagram here, sort of the reactive side of wellbeing. So when people go off, actually, we've got a great absence policy, we've got great return to work, but we didn't really focus on that proactive side, which on this slide pack, and you'll get the slide pack later sent out to you, is really sort of that proactive piece. And Mercers have done a great piece of work. They've helpfully allowed us to share this wellness barrier that actually shows if we could do more on that proactive side, then it really will make a difference to the well-being of people and really that helping them bring the best of themselves to work. So that was kind of our starting point, I would say, back in 2014, is to take a little bit of a step back and say, okay, we know what the bank strategy is. We know that from a wellbeing perspective, we can support that. And actually, let's take a slightly different lens through this. Let's take a different approach and more to that sort of proactive side of things, because actually we know that's what's going to make the biggest difference. So in terms of taking that different approach, the wellbeing had been kind of fragmented up until that point. So we had pockets within the bank that did a really good job of it. We had other places maybe didn't focus on it so much. So we took a sort of very high-profile bank-wide programme of events. And one of the big differences at that point was getting our comms teams on board. So for them, anything that we did then, we could get bank-wide comms support. And for us, that means our intranet, you know, front and centre wellbeing messages going out. So no matter where you sit within the bank, you get that one message. That was a big shift for us. We also put in place what costs a wellbeing framework. So this is still in operation today, actually. We call it the Wellbeing Implementation Committee. I don't like the name, but we'll have to think of something better probably at some point. But that's what we call it. It's called the WIC. It has responsibilities for global wellbeing. So I have representation from all of our divisions sit on that, as well as all of our regions as well. And it's a forum whereby we can share, well, I can share what we're doing at a bank-wide level, but we can also understand actually, perhaps in our personal and business banking, what are they going to be doing above and beyond that? So it's a great place for best sharing, best practice. And a really great example recently where our colleagues in Coots, who sit on that forum as well, had been to some of the external events in London, and I'd come on to the WIC to share their findings and to share some really great practices that they were seeing outside the bank as well. So it's a really great opportunity for us to talk internally, but also bring that outside in piece as well. It also allows us to gain insights from the region. So, hands up, I think at that point we'd been very UK-centric. We hadn't focused so much or really tried to understand what our regions, what was going on in the regions from a wellbeing perspective. And actually it was really insightful. So, a bit of a light bulb moment for us was, for example, in India, when we talk about mental health, that's not so much a term they would use. Actually, it's emotional well-being. So, whilst that sounds quite a simple thing on the face of it, it actually has a huge impact when it comes to employee engagement and how we deal with well-being in the bank. So it was great to get our regions on board as well. We also took we also wanted to take a sort of priority approach to health and well-being, because actually we could sit there as we used to and try and cover every single avenue of well-being possible, and that's one approach, and that may well work for people. For us, it was just too scattered. So actually, we really wanted to focus on sort of the top priorities, and I'll come on to that in a second. So the other big shift at that point was getting senior buy-in. And this was huge for us. So Ross McEwen, who is our chief exec and was our chief exec back in 2014, and Gary, maybe could just move on to the next slide. That would be great, thanks. He said something really interesting that for me, actually, I think was one of the turning points for wellbeing. So he stood up one morning to his, I think, top 700 leaders in the bank and said, if your people are not at the top of your work list when you get in the morning, please put them there and leave them there. Take an interest in their issues and find out their ideas. Now, this was quite a turning point within the bank, and it may sound really simple. And I think, for those in the call today, obviously, if you're from an HR perspective, it was music to our ears. And actually, we almost saw people at that point saying, oh, yeah, okay, actually, yeah, that's quite a good thing to do. And at that point, that's when the interest in wellbeing for me seemed to change. Suddenly, people thought, gosh, actually, if we do invest in our people, look after them, care for them, I can see that that's going to have a benefit from a business perspective as well. So I always come back to this quote, and I suppose it's the point I'm probably trying to make is that sort of senior buy-in, and for us, thankfully, it was at the very, very top of the organisation, had a monstrous impact, or momental impact is a better phrase, on everybody within the organisation, and really helped to get people involved. So we'll move on then to the next slide, which was around about 2015. So we'd got that senior buy-in, we'd got our communications team on board, and then during 15, it was all about setting foundations. What did we want well-being to look like? And the approach that we took, I sort of mentioned it briefly a couple of minutes ago, was to identify our top priorities. So we reached out to everybody. We asked, simply tell us what are the 3 or 4 things that you are really struggling with just now or would like the wellbeing programme to focus on. And without a doubt, the things that they came back with were anxiety, depression and stress, musculoskeletal health issues, and mental health as well. And it wasn't a particular surprise. I think what was quite interesting was that across all our regions, it was pretty much consistent. What that did is it gave us kind of, okay, almost a remit to say, so from a bank-wide perspective, those are the things we're now going to focus on. So you'll see on that diagram, and it's quite small on the page I have here, but hopefully if you've got the slides in front of you, it's a little bit bigger for you. But we looked at mental health, for example. So we signed up to the Time to Change pledge, which I'm sure most people in the call may be very familiar with, but if not, it was an initiative that's run out of England. It's a pledge to remove mental health stigma in the workplace, and we signed that really right back at the beginning to set a tone within the organisation that it was something obviously we take very seriously and something we wanted to focus on. So whilst it was set originally through the English government, actually we spoke to them and we've made that bank-wide for us. And we do that quite often. It's sometimes quite difficult to get wellbeing pledges that are truly sort of bank-wide or global or UK specific, for example, but that was one that actually there's no problem in taking something and making it suitable for your organisation. We also looked at various guides that we launched internally, so mental health guide, we had a stress guide. As you could imagine, RBS were going through a huge amount of change at that time, and we put in guides to help our employees manage change, and also our managers, help our managers to do that as well. We also introduced what's called Moment That Matter guides. Now they're quite unique actually. They're sort of not generic content, but it's help managers in that particular moment in time when somebody comes to them and says, actually, something has happened in my life. And we've got a whole range of them, from, heartbreaking situations if somebody's lost a baby, right through to the one that we have that kind of encapsulates mental health, which is how do you support a colleague that you're worried about? And it's a simple kind of one-page guide that's really there to help managers have that conversation, but also know where to direct people for extra support as well. So these were all sort of the foundations that we set around about that time. We also looked at physical health. So I mentioned at the beginning that musculoskeletal was one of our top issues. We were delighted to partner with the Global Corporate Challenge team. Again, many of you may know them. They've recently merged with Virgin Pulse, so it's the Virgin Pulse Corporate Challenge now. And we had, this is the 10,000 steps a day over 100 days. So we've done that for the last 3 years. We're doing something slightly different this year, but we had in year one 26,000 employees take part, and in year two that went up to 51,000. So we had around about 70–75% of our workforce taking part in the challenge. And what was fantastic about it was not only does it kind of tackle physical health and getting people to get their steps up every day, which we all know is a great thing to do, it also really helped with engagement and particularly teams as well. So you would join as a team of 7, and we really saw people getting so much more out of that from a team perspective. So it kind of ticked a lot of boxes for us that we didn't expect it to do, and something I would certainly sort of highly recommend. We also, on the physical health side, we wanted to help people to know their numbers. So what I mean by that is your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your weight, your height, etc. So we worked with one of our suppliers, Nuffield, who are one of our wellbeing suppliers, and they deliver 20-minute health checks for our people. So it's a really simple, really quick health check that people can access, and that was kind of the foundation as well. The other area that we wanted to obviously address was sort of the stress-related absence that we were seeing coming through, and particularly around about that time there was a real focus on resilience. So, as you can imagine from a bank perspective, the amount of change that people have gone through, particularly in the last 10 years, is really quite incredible. And it was difficult. You know, it was a difficult place to be in at times, and it was difficult from a personal resilience. How do we help people bounce back from, you know, what at times were really quite difficult situations, both internally and externally. So we launched a guide to resilience, and we put in place resilience programs for our managers and also for our employees as well. The other thing, just before moving on from sort of 2015, and this is all about kind of setting foundations, was working with our suppliers. So I mentioned one of our suppliers just a couple of minutes ago. We had a couple of what we called wellbeing supplier forums. Something new, we hadn't done it before, and it was around, again, all our suppliers in our room and saying to them, actually, these are the 3 or 4 things that we need to tackle from a bank-wide perspective. Please help us. How can we do this? How can we work? How can you all work together to help deliver this for us? And if I'm honest, I was probably a little bit sceptical going into it as to whether they would kind of put their arms around their own offerings and not want to share or not want to collaborate. I have to say it was the complete opposite to that. They were falling over themselves, I would say, to really work collaboratively together. And we had some fantastic examples where, and the challenge is one of them actually, where the global challenge was being run out of the global challenge company, but actually Nuffield worked in partnership with them to make sure that when people go into the Nuffield sites, it's all linked through, and actually it started the messaging about the corporate challenge as well. We had our occupational health teams involved. It was fascinating to watch, and just fantastic, and it's really set a very strong supplier wellbeing groups that we have going, and again that continues today as well. So that's kind of the foundation. So I move you on to 2016. We had a really good year, obviously the year before. One thing we recognised, and we hadn't really picked up on it, I suppose, at that point, was to have the benefits of taking a holistic approach to wellbeing. So again, if I go back to the challenge, you know, we initially launched that 10,000 steps a day, physical activity, great, tick box, but actually what we soon realised was that team part that I've talked about before, but also what we learned was how much effect it had on people, a positive effect on people's mental health as well. So, and we all know that if you take physical exercise, then actually your mental health improves as well. So we kind of realised actually taking that siloed approach of looking at it as physical only and mental only wasn't probably the best thing for us, and we changed it to a more holistic approach to wellbeing. And what was created around about that time in the bank is what's called a great place to work. So that's kind of the umbrella for everything that we do within the bank that helps to make RBS a really great place to work. And wellbeing is obviously one of the key pillars into that. So we carried on the work we'd done from the year before, but actually what we did was really that move towards recognising that it's not just about physical activity, it's about everything. So we worked very closely with the corporate challenge team to say, actually, let's incorporate physical exercise, mindfulness, nutrition and sleep all into the challenge. And they worked in partnership with us to develop that as well. So it was a really good year for kind of almost taking the wellbeing to the next step forward. And the other thing that we started to do that year was to look at our employee assistance programme. So we have an employee assistance programme that's, again, is bank-wide, and it was being used as you would expect. We had around about 5% utilisation at that point, which in itself was good. I think the industry average is around about 3 to 4%. But we did a dedicated campaign at that time to really make EAP almost the go-to wellbeing service. So if people had any issue at all, and so many of the EAP services were being underutilised at that time, we really did a big campaign around it. to the extent that we're now sitting up around about 9% utilisation, and during some of our bigger campaigns, we've seen it rise as sort of 12, 13% as well. So again, a really good example where actually sort of dedicated focus on some of those core wellbeing offerings that we have can really make a difference to people as well. So that was 2016, and then we moved into 2017. So 2017, and Gary, can I just take us on to the next slide? Lovely, thank you. 2017 was for us, actually, we had the foundation in place. We had, I guess, the structure of wellbeing, that holistic approach is we wanted to take it a little bit step further. So we, as I say there, we turned the dial up on mental health. It was around about the time, obviously last year, there was a lot of publicity externally around mental health. And also internally, we could feel sort of a movement internally that Time to Change pledge that we'd signed back in 2014 was actually really coming to fruition a little, and people were really interested in it, wanted to share their stories, wanted to share their information. So we did a number of things last year. With the biggest point, I mean, some of them are listed there, and I won't read them out to you, but the biggest one probably to pull out was Mental Health Awareness Week, which we ran obviously in May last year to tie in with the external campaign. And this was the one that we just did something different. So we recognised it within the bank. We, as you would expect, we did an intranet message. We guided people to the support and resources that I've talked about previously. But we're very lucky in the bank in that we had a new channel, which it's called Workplace, but it's effectively Facebook at work. So it's dedicated, sort of a closed site within the bank. And we have on there, we set up a wellbeing group, of which we have 26,000 members, which kind of blew us away, to be honest. We used that forum to set an internal campaign. So you may recall that there was the #1in4 campaign that was being run externally, and we started the campaign internally as well. And what we found was it went viral. It was quite inspiring to see how many people wanted to share their stories, wanted to, even if mental health didn't affect them personally, they were happy to share the story of a friend or a family member. And actually, it's been one of the biggest campaigns we've ever seen on Workplace within the bank. And I think what's quite special about it is it's not something that's kind of top down. It was very organic. You know, we started it off to see how it would go, and actually it became this really big thing. And we all kind of within the bank, we look back to last May, kind of looking to say, actually, there's something shifted within the bank at that point from a culture perspective. So I think if there are ways within an organisation to use those communication channels, and I appreciate, not everyone has something that, like a Facebook at work, but using those great open channels of communication to encourage people to share their stories, to open up, it really does have an amazing, powerful effect. To the point that we had some very senior leaders, standing up and talking about their experiences with mental health, and that really was extremely powerful for us. The other thing that we looked at last year was to simplify it. So we kind of had come from a place of well-being where we had lots of different offerings, lots of different suppliers, and actually it kind of wasn't under one roof. So we pulled that together, and again, it's quite difficult perhaps to see on the slide that I've got here, but we have this Wellbeing for You infographic. So it's just a simple place where people can go for everything that we've got that kind of touches the wellbeing space. And actually, I won't lie about this. We actually got this idea from a Unilever who had a very similar type of product. They had I think it was kind of a sort of London Tube type idea with different stations and various things. And it was just really simple and easy to use. And we find this extremely helpful. So we have it on our intranet site. We have banners that are pulled up. and it just helps people to access the information as quickly and easily as they can. So that was last year. If I move on to the next slide, thank you, Gary. So here we are, 2018. So our big five for this year are there. So actually, one thing I didn't say about 2017 is we started to explore into digital wellbeing as well. So for digital wellbeing, this is about how do we, again, it's that easy accessibility for people. How do we allow people to access wellbeing really simply? And we piloted a digital wellbeing app back in 2017. Moving to 2018, we've taken that further. So the pilot was successful. We're partnering with Bupa this year. They have a digital wellbeing product that we are working. We've partnered with them for 1 year, and it incorporates a number of things. So easy access to support and resources. We can run corporate challenges through it, as well as people can have individual or team challenges. And it also gives people access to an online health coach as well. So it was really important for us that we, I suppose, get with the times around digitalisation. And for wellbeing, it really lends itself to that as well. So we're really excited about that this year. We've just launched it to our employees, fantastic feedback. So we'll see how that develops this year. Obviously this year as well, time to change of mental health is not going away, very much turning up the dial again. So when I talked about Mental Health Awareness Week last year, we're again recognising it this year. We're quite lucky in that we're actually going to be doing a focus throughout all of May for mental health, which gives us amazing opportunities in the bank to really do some different things. And you'll see on that slide there, our wellbeing strategy is made up of 4 pillars now. So I think back to 2014 when we're kind of looking at physical and kind of looking at mental, we've got a really embedded, strong wellbeing strategy now that covers physical, mental, social and financial wellbeing as well. So financial wellbeing is the third one that I just mentioned there. So it's the newest kid on the block from a wellbeing perspective for us, but really focusing on how do we educate people, particularly around saving for pensions. And perhaps it's ironic, that we're a financial services organisation that we're thinking about this, but actually we obviously look after our customers extremely well. But actually we haven't really tackled our employees in this space. So we're very, very focused this year on making sure that we give employees the support and resources they need. And equally in the financial wellbeing space, we're looking at supporting people who are in debt as well. So I think historically we've pushed people towards EAP, but actually we're looking at how do we help to support people. And actually we often talk about financial wellbeing being as mental health was a few years ago. It's a taboo subject. People are embarrassed. They don't want to talk about it. So we're doing a lot of planning and work at the moment about how do we bring that to life? How do we normalise it and make sure that people are getting the support we need? So that's one of our big 5 for this year. The fourth one for us focus is the role of the line manager. So we're very, very conscious that it's for any wellbeing strategy to work, that role the manager plays is so significant. And we've great examples in the bank where it works really, really well. And we've got other examples where with poor management, it doesn't work so well. So a real dedicated campaign in the summertime this year of supporting our managers, giving them the resources and the education they need to be able to have really meaningful conversations with their employees and make sure they know where the support and resources are. And the 5th element for us this year is around our employee assistance programme. So I mentioned earlier that we did a lot of work to increase utilisation. And interestingly, what we've seen is that those figures I gave you earlier are the UK figures. That's not replicated in our region. So the utilisation is very, very low. It's sitting around 1%. So we're doing a dedicated campaign this year to look at our employee assistance programmes, particularly in regions, to really raise awareness and help our employees get the support they want. So those are our big 5 for this year. And as I said earlier, wellbeing is a very strong pillar in making the great place to work. So we have moved away from that fragmented approach. We have one bank-wide plan. And what's fantastic this year is all our businesses have got behind, and it's probably the first year I can say that they really have all got behind one plan. There's usually been one or two that have gone off and done something slightly differently, and that makes it difficult when you're trying to communicate to a large population, but it's great for this year. Our bank-wide communication channels are highly utilised. Obviously, we're continuing our drive around the stigma for mental health, and digitalisation, I mentioned there, is a key one for us. So whilst we're partnering with Bupa for this year, we're also thinking 5 years into the future. What does it look like? Where do we want wellbeing to be? So we're really trying to get to the forefront of that. And if I take you to the last slide, Gary. Thank you. Perfect. And I thought we'd just end this, and then we're very happy to open up for questions or thoughts, comments, but trying to just sort of share what has truly made the difference. And I think it's the things that I've talked about a couple of minutes ago, but having kind of that clear wellbeing strategy that links into your organisation strategy really gives you that license to do it. And that's where we saw, for example, Ross getting involved, and we also have an exec sponsor, Aileen Taylor, who sits on the bank's exco. She is our wellbeing sponsor, and that's made a massive difference to us. The other thing we found is actually it needs to be kept fresh and innovating. So the Global Corporate Challenge was probably a good example. We did it for 3 years, but actually people after 3 years, they were ready for something else. So that's what I'm saying, when we look at digitalisation, we're already looking sort of 3, 4, 5 years into the future. How can we keep it live and exciting so people engage with it? Because ultimately, it's back to what I said at the beginning around helping people bring the best of themselves to work. And we need to be able to keep that live and fresh for everyone. The other key things to pull out would be bring wellbeing to life through personal stories. Again, sort of reflection back to mental health last year. I really can't underemphasise the power that somebody standing up, it doesn't matter who it is, the power that has to say, actually, it's okay to talk about this. And we really did just see some incredible, brave people with some, deeply sad stories as well coming forward, and it just encouraged others to do so as well. Building wellbeing into the fabric of leadership. If I'm honest, I think we've still got, this is one of our areas to tackle. We still need to do a little bit in this space, or more in this space, but we're making really great headway. So we have in the bank a leadership programme called Determined to Lead, and wellbeing is very much woven into that. So it's all about, as a leader, what's expected of you, how do you care for your people, how do you have those conversations. So that, again, has really helped us to move the wellbeing agenda forward. We want to bring the outside in, and we're in a position where we're actually, when we look at our view scores, our view is our employee opinion survey. We're sitting in that upper quartile position for wellbeing, which is great news for us, and we're delighted for our colleagues. And we want to learn from others as well. So we'd love to hear about what other organisations are doing, and really bring that outside in. So if somebody's doing something fantastic, we'd love to learn from that. And I guess as a CIPD community, it's really important that we all share the activities that we're doing. And wellbeing, just to finish off, it does play a significant role in creating that great place to work for us. So I suppose in summary, setting those foundations and that holistic approach, and then building on it year and year, as well as looking forward to the next sort of 3, 4, 5 years, is probably the journey that we've been on since 2014, and we're in a good place at the moment. We're very excited about what the next few years bring. I think there'll be some exciting stuff coming onto the market that we'll see as well. So Gary, I think I'll maybe pause there. That's probably the end of the presentation. I've maybe gone on too long, but happy to answer any questions or have any thoughts.
Thank you so much, Fiona. That was absolutely fantastic, and definitely never went on too long. We have a couple of questions that have come through just now in the chat box. Obviously, if anybody else wants to take the opportunity to ask Fiona something, then please do so. First question was about the communications forum. Were the communications in there anonymised?
So the communications forum. Just trying to think what was
Facebook at work. Workplace.
Oh, perfect. No, so they're not actually. Yeah, and that's, to be honest, that's what made it so successful. So that no, everyone who went onto Workplace at Work has their own profile and talked about it. So it was not anonymised at all. And as I say, I think that is what just made it so incredibly powerful, that people were happy to post their own stories as well. The other thing that we had around that time was, we have an internal employee magazine. It's called Outside In, and we had a number of story articles on there as well, which again helped to bring it to life. But I think what was quite interesting was that people were sharing their stories openly on Workplace, and then on the back of it, people weren't just saying, "Thanks for sharing your story." They were saying, "Thanks for sharing your story, and gosh, let me tell you what's happened to me," or "Let me tell you about my family or my friend." So it really just did open up to people kind of normalising it and feeling free to have a conversation, as you probably would do with physical health, for example. There isn't that kind of stigma, so it was hugely encouraging to see.
Thanks, Fiona. I think it would be fair to say that was a significant, tangible change in the culture at the bank as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah.
Anonymised comments and feedback from people like that, who were, obviously feeling comfortable and supported enough to come out and talk about their experience in mental health. And some of them were very, very strong and powerful stories.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to say a wee bit, Fiona, about ROI, return on investment. And what I'm thinking here is, I know a lot of people on the call won't be working in organisations necessarily as big as RBS, and think, well, we haven't got access to all the resource and suppliers and money and stuff that you guys have. But I know I know you guys work really, really hard to make sure there's a kind of strong business case that underlies all of this as well. And I know some of the stuff around the ROI, even if it's industry figures and stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ROI, it is an interesting one. So we've certainly over the last year, I would say, really tried to get our arms around what is the return on investment for wellbeing. And the easiest answer is, it's not an easy thing to do. So we've looked at, sort of the measures around absence and, returning to work, etc. We measure that. And I guess the hope is that, at some point absence will reduce. But actually, what we've found is that there's no shift in absence for us at the moment. What there has been a shift in is the reasons for absence. So where we had kind of colds and flus type generic absences sitting very, very high within the bank, we're seeing that drop now, and things like, for example, mental health reasons rising. So for us, whilst the overall absence hasn't dropped, we're very encouraged to see that actually people are feeling far more comfortable to be very open around about some of the, the reasons for absence that they have. I mean, the return on investment we're monitoring very closely through our digital app, and that makes it a little bit easier. So we can tangibly see starting points of people sort of on an aggregated basis. And hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be able to see quite an easy return on investment at 12 months' time. So it will be interesting over the next 12 months to see how that progresses as well. But the other bit that we are particularly interested in is around employee engagement. So I mentioned earlier our employee opinion survey, and we monitor that very closely from a wellbeing perspective, and we're quite lucky that we've got a wellbeing index that's built into the wellbeing into the hour review as well. Sorry, can I just say it has a bit of background noise? If people could go on mute, that'd be great. Thank you. So we're very lucky that we can monitor that wellbeing index, and we've steadily seen the employee opinion survey, that wellbeing, increase over the last 4 years, and in fact it's gone up 10%. So there's various things that we can look at return on investment. I would say we haven't bottomed it all out yet, but I think we're certainly going down the road that within the next couple of years, hopefully we'll be able to have a bit more data around around that as well. In terms of the industry, there's various reports out there, but the one that we tend to focus on is a return of 1 in 7 for wellbeing. So if you invest £1, you're going to get a £7 return. That seems to be the readily accepted statistic that's out there. Hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Fiona. That's great. A couple of other questions that we've got time for. Some great feedback on the presentation from Mike Hughes. What, in your opinion, is the key driver or drivers to achieve successful implementation and timeline? I know you talked a bit about the 2 to 3 year timeline that we had there. If somebody was starting out from scratch, Fiona, what do you think would be the kind of key drivers for them to kind of get off and running, and what kind of timeline would you be a reasonable one?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think in terms of getting this kick-started, I would go back to your senior engagement. Get your senior team or a senior sponsor on board with this from day one. Have one plan for your organisation. So try not to have different departments doing different things. And a couple of other things. Your communication. That's the key. If you can get your communications right, it massively will help your plan. And try as well, probably not to focus on, well-being can be everything from, providing everyone fresh fruit in the morning through to something that actually is, from a mental health perspective, is really going to help people, their physical health, nutrition, etc. I would say try and bring it up a level. So actually it's things that are actually really going to make a difference sort of longer term as well. So those are probably the 4 things I would say if you're starting out. In terms of timelines, I mean, it's probably difficult to answer. I think you need to give yourself at least 2 years for it to really start making a difference. If I think back to us, 2014, was about setting the foundations. Nothing really significantly moved much during that time. But as soon as you get past that year 1, you really start to see things improving after that. So I would say give yourself a couple of years and then obviously keep building on it from there and then you'll have a successful programme.
Great. Fiona, we've got another, I think, time for one more question here from Christine Scott, who is working with a public body just now specifically to deliver wellbeing initiatives as well as embedding it into our business as usual activity in due course. As we're at the start of the journey, I guess we are nervous that all of the new initiatives and tools are launched, but that it doesn't change the culture. Any views that anyone has on this? So maybe Fiona, what's your views on, you do all this great work on wellbeing, but it doesn't really have an impact on the culture of the organisation or the cultural approach to wellbeing?
Yeah, that's a good question as well, and I absolutely understand the nervousness around it, because that's exactly where we were in 2014, and I'll be honest, around we don't have significant budgets available when it comes to this. I guess all I can do is look back to what has happened and the fact that it has changed culture and it is beyond what I expected it to. So I would say, absolutely acknowledge upfront that there's nervousness and things might not change. But I think if you start to build your programme and particularly tackle kind of those difficult things, so things like mental health, things like financial well-being, they are going to make a significant difference to your employees, and that's why I kind of draw that fresh fruit example. If you can really tackle those much more, taboo subjects that are difficult in the difficult box just now, there is no doubt it will change your culture, because you're doing something that's not expected, and you're doing something that genuinely is going to help people as well. And people, there's not one person in this organisation who thinks that well-being is a bad thing to do. Whatever you put in place, it's a good news story. And I guess the decision is, do you want to be bold and go for something like mental health or financial well-being, and there'll be others out there that I know will tackle, or actually do you want to kind of just do it on the softer side? And I guess my steer would be go for it. Just go for it, and use the channels be brave, and you will see a difference in culture.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Fiona, for that, and thank you everybody for bearing with us through some of the technical issues and difficulties.